teas, bunting, the local shop, quaint church spires, and games on the green. The sights and sounds of the classic village scene.
Everyone has their idea of the perfect village. I know I do.
But I've lived in a village for almost 40 years.
Come on, girls!
And I know there's more to village life than the picture postcard suggests. So I'm setting off again to explore the world of our smallest communities.
Don't you envy me?
I'll travel by land.
It's colder up here, Hedge.
By water.
He's a biggie. He might nip.
And by air.
Heavens above.
To find the characters and communities that have made a big impact. My window on the past is the Batsford Guides, whose words and pictures from the 1930s tell a story of village life. But I want to find out what it means to be a village today.
Oh, they're going to throw him into the sea.
And discover just why we're so passionate about this quintessentially British institution.
Beautiful, isn't it?
Britain's 10,000 villages have been shaped by many things, including industry, transport, and wars. But on this journey, I've come to a part of the country where one thing always dominates: the landscape. I'm in the far northwest of England, Cumbria, a county of drama and wonder. Villages here have always intrigued me. From Morecambe Bay to the Pennines, I want to explore the unique role of the Cumbrian landscape. But of course, I have to start with the beauty of the Lake District.
I have been to the lakes before, but not for a wee while, so I'm so looking forward to seeing more and finding out about the people who actually live here all the time, not just touch it occasionally in the spring and summer.
I'm starting somewhere completely new to me. Just a few miles from the ever-popular Windermere, I'm heading to a less crowded place, one recommended by my trusty guide, Coniston Water.
There it is. My first lake. The road along the east side yields fine views across the water to bare but noble fells behind. The scene is wooded opulence against a mountain background. Brilliant description. Now, the village I'm heading for actually shares its name with the lake, Coniston.
Coniston developed in the shadow of the local copper mines. For 3 centuries, these quiet fellsides boomed with the noise of heavy industry. But no copper has been produced for more than a century. And local employment today is somewhat more diverse than it was.
How wonderful, an honest shop.
Local producers have been selling all sorts here for the past 3 years.
Oh, that's beautiful. For nuts. Or whatever you want. You could put anything in it. And it's cherry wood. That's me.
Honest shoppers are left to record their own purchase.
Comment. Beautiful.
for putting their honest money in the box. Oh, if life could always be so simple. Honest shop profits help keep this building open. It has been serving Coniston since at least the 1850s, the same decade that the railway came to the village, bringing visitors into the heart of the Lake District.
The Furness Railway Company built the line, and in true Victorian entrepreneurial style, they looked for their next business opportunity. And here it comes. The gondola. Isn't it beautiful?
At a cost of 1,000 guineas, the steam yacht gondola was launched in late 1859, bringing a very deliberate Venetian flavour to Coniston and its lake.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Morning.
For Victorians and Edwardians, gondola represented the height of lakeland sophistication. I like to think much of that sophistication is still with us.
This is the third-class compartment.
Yes, yes.
It's rather grand, though.
It is, yeah. The leather buttoned upholstery is rather nice, isn't it?
And I'm coming into...
Yes, into the first-class saloon.
First class.
Yes,
How
yes.
lovely. Look at the fittings. And the ceiling with the Lancastrian rose.
Yeah.
And the beautiful gilded wood there at the top, the pillars. It's the attention to detail which is ravishing, isn't it?
But gondola's history has been far from plain sailing. Demand for steam-powered cruising dwindled after the First World War, and the yacht was retired in 1936. Having served as a houseboat, the former Queen of Coniston suffered the indignity of more than a decade spent submerged in the lake.
My father was working for the National Trust about 40-odd years ago and was one of the people who had the vision to restore it.
Good for your dad. Quite right. How wonderful.
The restoration took 2 years and cost £400,000.
And would this have been the colour initially?
Yes, based really on the interior of the railway carriages. So the first-class railway carriage on the Furness line would have been furnished like this. So ladies dressed in their Victorian attire would feel very comfortable in these surroundings. Yeah.
I feel quite comfortable in my 21st century attire.
Just as then, gondola is now powered entirely by steam. I've been persuaded to make myself useful.
I'm actually steering this boat, I want you to know.
If you want to go faster, you just turn this wheel here.
I don't.
You don't want to go faster?
No. I'm a good sort of slow.
No problem.
But I'm heading for the Watson.
That jetty, yeah, that's fine.
Is it?
Yeah, she's going to come round well before...
And there's someone swimming.
That's okay.
But we might drown them. Get out of the way, swimmers.
And if you want to tell them that, that you're in your way, above your head, that piece of string there, go on, give it a hard pull. There you go.
It's time for me to disembark.
It's been a pleasure having you.
And thank you, Billy. Good boy.
But I'm staying by the lake because to many people of my generation, if you mention Coniston water, another name springs to mind.
Donald Campbell prepares in the traditional English manner for yet another attack on the world water speed record.
Donald Campbell was a hero of my youth. In the 50s and 60s, he set speed records almost at will.
To the joy of everybody, a new record was set at 403.1 miles an hour.
When it came to water speed, Campbell's natural home was Coniston Water and its village.
So she says I'm not.
I'm meeting Anthony Robinson, known as Rob, whose parents hosted Campbell during his various record attempts.
So what did your parents then run?
It meant Rob grew up around the excitement of the famous Bluebird boat.
This is Bluebird.
This is Bluebird, yes, going into the boathouse there, which is, you can just see
Just
behind
over
us.
there.
And if you look very carefully, you can actually see a little boy up a tree there.
I wonder who that is.
Well, it was somebody who was bunking off school. Unfortunately, the picture ended up in the paper, and somebody wanted to know why I was up a tree when I was supposed to be sick.
While Bluebird and the Campbells were in town, Coniston was packed out, with engineers, officials, the press corps, and expectant Campbell fans. But for the core team, record attempts could be an endurance test.
They were here for many months, many weeks on end, and sometimes the weather wasn't right. If the weather was right, the boat wasn't right. And so Mr. Campbell would say, right, you can spend £0.50 on your fancy dress, that's the limit, and the winner gets £1 at the end of the day. And you can see they're dressed up as chefs and climbers and all sorts.
Between 1956 and 59, Campbell broke the water speed record 4 times on Coniston. And in November 1966, he returned, determined to break the magic barrier of 300 miles per hour. It was a decision that has left an indelible mark on the village.
This is 1966. I was actually working for Donald by this time. See me, I'm actually in the little boat beside the Bluebird here.
Campbell waited and tinkered for nearly 2 months, even taking Bluebird out for a Christmas morning blast. But by the 4th of January 1967, everything seemed to have come together.
We came down early in the lovely frosty morning, and the lake was flat calm. Everybody was sort of fairly familiar that this could be the day.
Rob and Chief Engineer Leo Villa were in the support boat, as usual, as Bluebird made her first pass along the measured kilometre.
We could tell it was very, very fast. And then we got the speed from the timekeepers, virtually 300 miles an hour.
Wow.
Campbell turned and, in accordance with the rules, commenced his return run.
Fate was to strike.
As he crossed the start line, he was approaching 320 miles an hour. But Bluebird was losing stability.
We could see the boat come out of the water and did a complete somersault and then crashed back into the water. We just sort of stood there watching it, to be honest. I can remember Leo Villa giving me a slap on the back and saying, "Come on, Robbie, for God's sake, get going." By the time we got to the accident scene, the boat had actually sunk.
Did the whole village go into mourning?
It was almost disbelief, really, to start with.
Yes,
because so many record attempts have been so successful.
Yes.
But we just weren't used to failures.
In 2001, Campbell's body was discovered and the wreckage of Bluebird was finally raised from the bed of the lake. He wasn't a local man by birth, but Donald Campbell has become part of the Coniston story. His famous boat is now being restored, but once completed, she will return. The Campbell family have made it clear, Bluebird and its pilot belong in Coniston. Next, I discover the Cumbrian breed that was Beatrix Potter's real-life love.
It's the lambs, they're younger than me.
And I meet the villagers planning to buy a mountain.
Bravo, and good luck.
I'm in Cumbria, finding out how the county's famous landscape has influenced village life here. I've come to the valley, just north of Coniston, to delve into the wonderful world of one of Lakeland's most cherished figures.
Flopsy, Mopsy and Cottondale, who were good little bunnies, went down the lane to gather blackberries. But Peter, who was very naughty, ran straight to Mr. McGregor's garden and squeezed under the gate. You see, I can still remember it.
I grew up reading a lot of Beatrix Potter. And while we all know of her books, not many of us know that she was a great champion of Lakeland farming. Nowhere more so than around Coniston, the home of her favourite breed of sheep. In her later years, Potter became a prize-winning breeder of the Lakeland Herdwick, a sheep almost exclusive to this region. She also brought up farms, lots of them, including this one, Yew Tree Farm. Joe McGrath is taking me to meet her partner, the current farmer, John Watson, for an insight into an iconic Lakeland breed.
What is so special about Herdwicks?
Oh, their ability to thrive in the Lake District on the high fells. In the winter, they can be harsh, bleak places.
So they might be up there in the deep, deep snow?
Oh, undoubtedly.
Now, they're all waiting to see their beautiful lambs. How old are they?
They're about 6 weeks old.
And some of them are already losing their black fleeces, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. In a couple of months' time, the faces will be completely white. Really? What a transformation.
Joe, you're an artist, and you've drawn some of these beautiful ones. The Lake District wouldn't be the Lake District without them, would they?
No, they have got a very distinctive, very smiley face. I think that's what people like so much about them. When you're drawing them, it's one of the things that really stands out. That little smile.
They want to get out now, don't they?
I think you're right.
Yes.
Right, you can open the gate and they'll all walk out.
Come on, girls. Way!
Almost a century ago, Beatrix Potter thought these sheep and their farmers were under threat. Forestry plantations, tourism and modern development were changing life and lives in the lakes.
Oh, it's wonderful. I love the jumping. They're so pleased to be out.
With 15 farms in this area, Potter was protecting their future.
I'm trying to keep up with the sheep. It's the lambs, they're younger than me.
These sheep continue to play a vital role here. They are the lawnmowers of the Lake District. Beatrix Potter knew how important Herdwicks are to preserving the look and feel of the area. She left her farms to the National Trust on condition that they all maintained Herdwick flocks.
Oh, they're so pleased to be in there. I think Miss Potter would have been very pleased to see her favourite breed of sheep doing so well.
Protecting the landscape is a big part of life here, even today. Over the dramatic fells is a village overshadowed in more ways than one by its massive neighbour, Blencathra. At over 2,800 feet, Blencathra is one of the giants of the area, an absolute favourite of fell walkers and the biggest factor in the history of Threlkeld. the small community at its foot. One family has owned Blencathra for nearly 4 centuries, but since 2014, all 2,700 acres of it have been up for sale. The locals have spotted an opportunity they believe will benefit us all. I'm meeting Debbie Cosgrove and friends.
Hello, Debbie. Hello, nice
to find out about their audacious attempt to buy a mountain.
Somebody told me on social media that the mountain had been put up for sale first time in 400 years. And I very jokingly said, well, if we all throw in a tenner, we can buy it. And suddenly people were messaging me saying, go for it. So I said that if we opened a new group and if we had 500 members by the Monday,
Yes.
I would make arrangements to speak to the agent and see what the deal was.
By the Monday, Debbie's new group had 2,500 members and has grown ever since. The Friends of Blencathra charity was quickly established with Debbie as its chair. A year later, the group has recently been accepted as the vendor's preferred bidder.
Now, how much? I haven't costed any mountain.
Not allowed to say.
Oh, you're not allowed to say? No.
Can we say what it was advertised? It was advertised at 1.75 million. It went up for auction, and we quite rightly had to bid the lowest amount because we're a charity and we're not allowed to pay more than the going rate. And gradually we fought off all contenders, and we're the last ones in the running.
Now it's just the tying up of loose ends, which, needless to say, takes a long time.
Has anyone shown any interest in giving you money for the mountain?
Yes, we've had a huge amount of support. What we're saying is, no, it's a donation, and you're donating in perpetuity for everybody. So we all own it, whether you put 5p, nothing, or £100,000 in.
After 12 months of fundraising, I hope they raise the agreed purchase price and secure the future of this mountain for the community.
I do have enormous admiration for you. Please hand on your enthusiasm to the younger lot. I mean, you're all terribly young, but the mountain will be there longer than you. Bravo.
Thank you.
And good luck.
Leaving Blencathra and the Lake District behind me, I'm heading northeast to areas less frequented. The Eden Valley is a place of lush countryside, sandstone villages, and the winding Eden River.
Now I'm going to cross this beautiful old bridge. Oh, but the view, it's glorious.
Kirkoswald has been an important settlement since the 12th century. It gets its name from King Oswald of Northumbria, who, 500 years earlier, helped spread Christianity across the north of England. But I'm passing through the village to unearth a local activity that is truly Cumbrian.
I'm looking for a field full of parked cars, people in wellies, probably armed with binoculars, and certainly a large amount of dogs.
For over 200 years, farmers, villagers, and townspeople alike have been bringing their dogs to spots all over the county.
Hello!
For a few hours this afternoon, some fields and woodland a few miles from Kirkoswald will become the global epicenter of hound trailing.
Margaret.
Margaret Baxter is secretary of the Hound Trailing Association.
Now, this is peculiar just to Cumbria?
It is, yes.
Right.
There's a little bit over into Yorkshire and Northumberland.
Right.
It began as a working class sport. A lot of it started in the mining villages and towns. Yes, it was more on a par with sort of whippets and pigeons.
Right.
Hound trailing originally gave the fox hunting community a way of keeping their hounds fit during the summer off-season. But the thrill of racing soon created a quite distinct local tradition.
Of course, betting was involved.
Yes.
So that made it a bit more exciting.
Right.
There are around 500 racing hounds on the circuit, 4 of them belonging to Margaret. But all hopes today rest on her freshest talent.
Aren't you beautiful?
Of the 5 races this afternoon, Margaret has a 1-year-old racing in the puppy maidens class.
And what's her racing name?
Chinook.
Chinook.
Up against Chinook today are 10 other pups.
Lots of luck, Chinook. You be a good girl. You win. Can't wait to go, can you? There they go. Where's Chinook?
She's on the left at the front.
Come on, Chinook. And do they go into those woods?
Yes, they jump that rail.
Do they? Yes, they are. Over.
Through fields, woods, and over fellsides, the hounds follow an irresistible trail of aniseed and paraffin. The 5-mile course will take the pups around 20 minutes. Just enough time for a quick flutter.
The one I know is Chinook.
Chinook, that's it.
The odds are
6 to 1.
6 to 1.
Right.
£2 each way.
£2 each way. £2.50 each way.
Okay, £2.50 each way. It's Saturday.
Now it's just a case of waiting for your dog to come in.
Can you see them?
Maybe 4th or 5th.
Oh dear, I want her in the first 3 places, don't I? Come on, Chinook!
But with 6 pups across the finish line, there's still no sign of Chinook.
Can you see her? No, she hasn't finished yet.
Oh, what?
This is her.
Coming over. Is this her?
That's her.
Oh, good girl.
Yeah, well, that's not too bad.
It's an honourable 7th place for Chinook. Sadly, not quite enough to trouble my bookie friend.
Oh, she's having a roll.
There she is. She's rolling in the grass. She did well, didn't she? You good girl. You good girl.
There are few parts of the country where farmers and landowners could possibly consent to dozens of hounds tearing across their land. This is a Cumbrian tradition made for the Cumbrian landscape.
Everyone seems to enjoy it. The people, the bookie, he's got my £5, and the hounds more than anything. They're so happy to start and so happy to finish. I think it's wonderful.
Next, I'll discover what's required to live in the highest village in England.
The Nenthead Community Snowplough.
And I'll be dropping in on Cumbria's food capital for some very sticky pudding.
That's delicious.
I'm in Cumbria, exploring the famous landscape and the village life it has shaped. I'm now heading to the eastern extremity of the county and climbing the Pennines. In fact, my destination is the highest village in England.
It's called Nenthead, and it's 1,500 feet above sea level. And I can assure you, coming up this road, it's felt every inch of 1,500 feet.
Rugged and bleak, there's so much space in the Pennines that you wonder if you're still in congested old England. There was one thing that brought people to live and work up here: mining. These hills have been mined since medieval times, but now they look very different indeed.
What an extraordinary place. Hardly anything I'm looking at here is natural. All over there you can see it's dead, isn't it? It's like the surface of Mars, I suppose. It'll probably take about a century for nature to reclaim this.
As Britain industrialized, demand for Pennine lead soared. Roofing and piping relied on it. And as the industry grew, the mining company felt the need to house miners nearby. But the Quaker Board of Directors were thoroughly progressive and created one of the first industrial villages in the country. By the 1820s, there was a market hall complete with clock tower and a school for educating miners' families. In the next decade, the mining company excelled themselves. They built a working men's reading room.
As you can see now, it's the village community shop. But then it was a place where the mine workers could come and read books. And the mining company organized this 2 decades before the government thought it was a good idea to have free libraries for all.
Like all good mining communities, faith was important. The large Methodist chapel was built by the mining company in 1873 and became the centerpiece of the village. But 50 years after mining ended here, it lies unused. I'm joining villager Kim Hobson to find out about this ghost of Nenthead's mining past.
What an amazing room. So much light, and the windows are glorious. And they're all still here, aren't they? Oh, a few cracks.
It's lovely, isn't it?
Isn't it wonderful? And look at the sea.
Yes.
Up in the gallery and down amongst the pews, this chapel would have thronged with worshippers. There were 2,000 villagers in the mining heyday. The vast majority of them were Methodist. But that community has all but vanished now. The chapel was last used in 2002.
What is going to happen to it? Because here it is in a very poor state of repair.
We're going to buy it because it's not owned by the community at the moment, and we're going to turn it into a cafe, and we're going to put some room in here for the community shop.
And the organ?
The organ's going to get taken out, carefully restored and put back so we can have concerts and recitals.
That's lovely.
I just need to learn to play it.
Yes.
Public services are thin on the ground 1,500 feet up the Pennines, so the villagers have to be self-reliant. As well as the shop, they've already organised their own playground, garden, and even the public toilets. Where once a mining company took control, now it's the villagers who have seized the initiative.
I love the fact But when the council said they couldn't actually clear all the roads in the winter, the villagers organised this, the Nenthead Community Snowplough.
I'm just glad to say it hasn't been needed this morning. It's time for me to leave the Pennines and wind my way to the southern end of Cumbria. I'm heading to the Cartmel Peninsula. When the Lake District National Park was created in 1951, the village of Cartmel was left a few hundred yards outside the park. But that's not to say this place isn't important. As my guidebook notes, Cartmel is an ancient community set around an impressively large 12th century priory.
It is in a very good state of preservation. That's true. From without, it strikes the eye at once by reason of the curious diagonal set of the upper part of the tower upon the lower. Yes, it is extraordinary, isn't it? It is certainly an enrichment of shape without any sacrifice of symmetry. I agree with her.
But my 1940s guide could have no idea why I've come to Cartmel today. The latest chapter in the village's history started just 20 years ago. Cartmel is now all about food.
Hello, beauty.
The revolution began in the old village shop, a delightful establishment now enjoying a new lease of life, thanks to a pudding.
Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning, how are you?
Very well, thanks.
Good.
What a marvellous shop.
Thank you very much.
But I suppose most people come here for...
Sticky toffee pudding.
May I have a piece?
You certainly can. I'll get that for you.
Sticky toffee pudding is something of a British favourite these days, but it was first served in Cumbria in the 1970s. And, thanks to Sarah and her family, Cartmel now considers itself the home of sticky toffee.
There we are.
Oh, that looks delicious.
You didn't want any cream or ice cream?
I just think it looks beautiful like that.
That's fine.
Looks absolutely gorgeous. That's delicious. While I'm eating, would you please tell me how you started making all this?
We had a little restaurant in Grange. My parents started it, where we made it. And then we moved here in about 1993. And when we arrived, it was a post office and general store.
Oh, really?
We used to make the sticky toffee pudding in a take-home manner, and it took off from there, really.
And over a period of about, what, 5, 6 years?
Yes,
or something?
yeah. We eventually got rid of the post office and just concentrated on puddings.
Puddings can now be found as far away as America and Dubai.
Now, what's the secret?
Good ingredients, proper butter, free-range eggs, nice dark sugar.
Well, that's as much as Sarah is going to reveal. But because Sarah chose the village name when branding her puddings, her business has proved a great PR hit for the culinary reputation of Cartmel. The village is a haven for all of us who love our gastropubs. Our coffee, local cheese, fine wine, and ice cream. But the icing on the cake has been a restaurant, housed in the village's old smithy. In 2003, a Hampshire chef took a punt and opened L'Enclume. Barely 10 years later, Simon Rogan's venture had acquired 2 Michelin stars and was hailed as Britain's best restaurant. But I've come to Simon's unseen engine room. Just outside the village, there's 12 acres of lettuces, radishes, leeks, kale, turnips, shallots, anything that the Cumbrian climate will nurture.
So do you think of yourself now as a Cartmel villager?
I've been here 12 years now, so I understand I'm...
Almost.
Yeah, I'm still an off-comer, but not quite. A local now.
What was the decision that made you think, I must grow my own?
It only took a very respected food critic to tell me that, had a whisper in my ear and said, "Do you realise what this could become if you focused on what you were good at?" And that was obviously being connected to our surroundings and concentrating on the local larder. So I took it one step further and said, well, we're going to ban all foreign ingredients, and let's make sure that every ingredient that comes on our plate is from Cumbria.
What about the meat you use?
Well, we're sport for choice around here, aren't we?
They're all grazing the fields.
Yeah. I mean, we all our beef, lamb, pork. It's all from the local farms in the area. There's amazing, passionate people that have just superb products. So there isn't really that much we have to go out of the county for.
Well, I think it's splendid, and this all looks so healthy.
Cartmel may have lost its post office, but you can't help be impressed how the village outside the national park has led the way in making the Lake District a food lover's destination. It's a testament to how communities can reinvent themselves. Next, I'm getting to grips with the notorious sands of Morecambe Bay.
Heavens above. What a view.
And back in the Lake District, there are some strong opinions about the local homes.
75% are adorned with bamboo tables and aspidistras.
My journey around Cumbria has brought me to the southeast corner of the county. The last village, in fact, before you cross into Lancashire. I'm heading to Arnside, a village that overlooks the upper reaches of Morecambe Bay. But on the way, it suggested I divert to the local viewpoint. Nobody mentioned the rather steep climb. I made it. It was worth it. What a wonderful view.
You see, over there you can still see the wonderful Cumbrian fells. This is the estuary of the River Kent, hence Kendal, which rises in the mountains over there. And it comes right along here, along with the tornado, having a practice. Oh, look at that. I bet he's got a good view. And another one coming over. I don't know that they were exactly tornadoes, because I'm not terribly good on fast jets. I'm better on birds.
There's no mistaking my next village, though. Adorned with bunting, a waterfront promenade, and even a pier, Arnside does an excellent impression of being beside the sea. Come here when the tide's out and you'll find more sand than you can ever wish for. For centuries, there was a small port here, but it disappeared as soon as it was decided in the mid-19th century that Cumbria's coastal towns needed a railway. Arnside's popularity exploded, and it became a trendy retreat. But the village's whole history has been played out against the treacherous backdrop of Morecambe Bay. For centuries, people have been caught out by fog, quicksand, and 15 miles per hour tides. Since 1999, though, the locals have taken matters into their own hands.
Heavens above! What a view!
Where Lake District villages have their mountain rescue teams, Arnside has the 22 volunteers of Bay Search and Rescue.
Spectacular, isn't it?
It is wonderful.
There you go, 122 square miles of sand.
There seems to be hardly any water at all here.
There isn't. It's a huge expanse of flat sand. The scary thing is that it really only takes around an hour or an hour and a half to fill this entirety with water on a spring tide. Quite soft, this stuff.
This all-terrain vehicle was designed for the Swedish military, but instead of snow and ice, it tackles sand and mud. At low tide, Morecambe Bay can seem firm and inviting, but areas of thick, wet quicksand are everywhere.
The bay is covered by grass round the outsides, so of course lots of farm animals graze there, and one of the other roles that we play around the bay is large animal recovery. So,
how large?
Very large. One of our last really big ones was a Hereford bull.
From farm animals to vehicles to disorientated walkers, the team is called into action once a fortnight, ready to guide the lost back to shore or pull the unfortunate from the quicksand.
Right. It's not that windy, is it?
But with high tide almost 6 hours away, Gary and Paul are letting me out on the sands.
So these places...
Almost a mile offshore, the sense of space in just this corner of Morecambe Bay is really quite daunting.
Right now, we're still on a bit of a banking, which is really firm, and yet only 2 or 3 yards in front of us. If we were to walk out into that, I absolutely guarantee you will be up to the tops of your thighs within 2 or 3 paces. And the problem is that quicksand will hold you, and the tide comes in at such a ferocious pace that it's game over.
The landscape has been dramatic throughout my Cumbrian travels, but here, far removed from the Lakeland Fells, the power of that landscape is more apparent than ever.
A lot of the things I do, I feel very privileged. And to come out here and see this amazing expanse of sand and water and talk to these chaps who actually put their lives at risk rescuing people is amazing. And to pick a day like today, how do we do it?
I'm ending my tour of Cumbria with a journey to what's always been the most popular area of the lakes, its very centre.
My Batsford guide calls this the tourist's way, the arterial road for the holidaymaker's paradise. It heads north to south through Lakeland.
It leads to a village one simply cannot ignore, Grasmere. It's not exactly hidden, it's true, but the story of Grasmere is in many ways a story of the lakes and how we came to love them. Art shops, cafes, gingerbread and visitors. They all thrive here. But the village isn't for everyone, including Doreen Wallace, author of my guidebook.
The houses of the 19th century influx of gentry and near-gentry are loathly. Everything is wrong with them. The colour of this new slate has no mellowness. The roofs are harsh and cold. And why gables? The squirrely bits of wooden edging here and there look nearly meretricious. Bow windows abound. About 75% are adorned with bamboo tables and aspidistras. She's wonderful.
But whether you agree with her or not, the Victorians made Grasmere what it is. And it was all prompted by one man, William Wordsworth, who, with his romantic poetry, caused a national love affair with this area that has never lost its spark. Wordsworth arrived here aged 29, remained a true local, and is buried in the churchyard. I wonder what he'd have made of Grasmere today.
As you can see, there's no shortage of Wordsworth material here. But I'm rather curious about the other Wordsworth, his sister, Dorothy.
Dorothy was a constant presence in William's life and a great diary writer. Years later, her account of life here in the village was published.
26th of December, 1801. Grasmere Lake, a beautiful image of stillness, clear as glass, reflecting all things. The church and buildings, how quiet they were. Wonderful writing, it's so evocative. And this was for a journal she never expected to be published.
She and William lived on the edge of the village in Dove Cottage, a remarkably humble property considering its famous tenant. But it has a beautiful hillside garden that Wordsworth called the loveliest spot that man hath ever found. It's where I'm meeting Jeff Cowton of the Wordsworth Trust.
What was Grasmere like when Wordsworth lived here?
Already by this point, tourism was making a mark. One of Dorothy's earliest entries in her journal is that she notices tourists passing by the house. But then as Wordsworth becomes popular, people start coming to visit Wordsworth sites. There's one guidebook in particular that says, well, while you're in the area, why don't you call on Wordsworth? And he might show you the garden. So he was a tourist. I know. He was a tourist attraction.
Yes.
And then gradually, the places in the poems became sites of pilgrimage themselves.
Would he have read her journal?
She said that she wrote it for him. Her observations are so wonderful that, an ordinary scene becomes transformed in Dorothy's eyes and in her writing.
Now, most people, when they think of Wordsworth, think of the poem Daffodils. Who saw daffodils?
Well, they both saw daffodils. William and Dorothy were walking by Ullswater, and they were surprised to find these daffodils. And in her journal, Dorothy says, when we were in the woods beyond Goreborough Park, we saw a few daffodils close to the waterside. They grew among the mossy stones about and about them. Some rested their heads upon these stones as on a pillow for weariness, and the rest tossed and reeled and danced, and seemed as if they verily laughed with the wind.
Wonderful.
It's a beautiful description.
Tossed and danced he uses in his poem, doesn't he?
It seems Dorothy was an even more intriguing character than I'd imagined. And how appropriate to end my Cumbrian journey with the pair that did so much to establish our love of this landscape. I'm leaving Grasmere village to take in its neighbouring lake. It's a viewpoint the Wordsworths would have known and loved, as have visitors ever since.
I've had the most fantastic time travelling through Cumbria, a place I only knew vaguely. It's been amazing to see the different communities, the mining that has come and gone. The life of the hill farmer is really tough, but I applaud and very pleased about the popularity of the Herdwick. I've seen people trying to buy a mountain. Wonderful. But all the time, although the communities and the people have adapted and changed, the thing that hasn't is this majestic landscape. No wonder Wordsworth was so inspired by this.
Next time, I'm north of the border in Scotland, getting a bird's eye view.
Fascinating.
Of Royal Deeside.
I can hardly get up.
I'll visit Balmoral to check on the royal vegetable patch.
When the Queen was here, they were already going over.
And I'll be on the mountainside learning the subtleties of gamekeeping.
Are you all right? I'm worried about your trousers.
It's quite wet now.